Hey, everybody, and welcome to my Marilyn Manson We Are Chaos review. This is going to be the first episode in a new series that I'm starting called In Retrospect, where I deep dive into albums that are not newly released and review them. I'll be starting with Marilyn Manson's material and eventually branching out to other artists and bands. Um, for the sake of Manson, I'm going to be reviewing his albums backwards since One Assassination Under God just came out. So it just kind of feels right to go that way. So we're going to start with We Are Chaos and go all the way back to Portrait of an American Family. I'm going to try, emphasis on try, to get you guys one of these a week. That might not happen, but needless to say, I can promise you, if it doesn't happen every week, I will still be doing the series and still trying to do this for you guys since you enjoy them so much. With that being said, let's get right into it. So, Marilyn Manson, We Are Chaos, starting with the opening track, Red, Black, and Blue. So, this song opens up with a haunting monologue, and it really sets the tone for the album with a sense, it's got like a brooding unease to it, right? The title itself is also, it sets the same kind of unease as well. It's a very abstract title and can be interpreted in a brooding and uneasy way. So, like, look at it. So it's red, black, and blue. Okay, three different colors. But let's take the red out of that equation. Now you just have black and blue. What does black and blue mean? You're bruised, beaten up, right? Now, look at red by itself. In the context of black and blue being bruised and beaten up, red can be interpreted as blood. So, a way that this title can be interpreted, in my opinion, is bloodied and bruised, which, when you look at the lyrics and you dive into it, it kind of gives off that was what he was leaning into a little bit. So you've got lyrics like, all I can see are gods on the left and demons on the right. And then you've got another lyric like, am I garbage or God, church or trash can? This is somebody who is having a very intense internal conflict with themselves. You know, they're fighting against almost like an identity crisis, right? They're fighting against, or Manson really in this regard is fighting against himself. You know, am I what I say I am, or am I what everybody else says I am? Because, you know, I think I'm garbage. Everyone else thinks I'm God. People, people say that I'm the church, like I'm the pastor. Everyone wants to come and listen to what I have to say, but I think everything I have to say is trash. You know, it belongs in the trash can kind of situation. And it's this constant tug of war between the demon on his, the demon on his right and the God on his left, you know, the good and evil on each, you know, the angel on your shoulder and the devil on the other side kind of situation. And now you have to figure out whether or not, like, which one of them is true. The answer always kind of lies somewhere in the middle, because then that way you can have some form of humility with yourself. But at the same time, what if either one of them is wrong? Like, what if both of them are wrong in general? Because then it's like, what am I doing here? And now you're just constantly fighting with yourself and beating yourself up for things that you think are in your control, but really aren't. Going on to track number 2, We Are Chaos, the title track of the album. This is a really beautiful song, but it has a really unique contrast to it, in my opinion. Like, reading the lyrics, if you just read the lyrics without the instrumental itself, it's a very dark song. But when you add the instrumental beneath it, it becomes almost uplifting, triumphant. Like there's a positive spin on the negativity of the lyrical content, right? And I think that gives the album or not the album, the song, a very unique position from Manson, or just how do I say, a unique perspective from Manson's writing capability, especially because it has a lot of poppy elements to it, which is something we don't really see from him that often. You've got the anthemic kind of chorus, like this is almost like, yeah, this is like classic. What's I'm looking for? Oh god, arena style kind of choruses. Like, this is something you'd sing and then have the entire kind of like arena sing back to you. Not to say that he doesn't have other songs like that, but this one like really hits that point home, because we are chaos. It's a plural. It's talking about all of us. We are the chaos kind of situation, right? So like with lyrics, where is it? Yeah, so you got lyrics like, if you say that we're ill, give us your pills, hope will just go away. You know, doctors, medical people, professionals, or just in general, people would rather just kind of push their new like chemical miracle onto you, put a band-aid on a bullet wound, rather than actually fix the problem. They're there to kind of treat the symptoms, not the cause. No one wants to really fix the cause, because the problem is the cause is the chaos itself. Like, yes, that could be like something actually medical with like your head or something, or, you know, medical in general, right? Biological. However, that is at the end of the day what makes all of us who we are. Like, going into the chorus lyrics themselves specifically, we are sick, fucked up, and complicated. We are chaos. We can't be cured. Human nature itself can't be cured or controlled, which is what makes us human. You know, all of the faults that our bodies have in general, or just we have as people, right? Whether that is biological, whether it's mental, or anything like of that nature, right? That is what makes each of our lives unique to us. Like, the things that I've had to do with my life, things that have happened to me, completely unique to me. They probably haven't happened to you. Well, let me rephrase, they haven't happened to you, because even if you had a similar experience, we didn't live the same exact one-to-one. There is no symmetry to it. There is an asymmetrical parallel, but there is never a complete one-to-one, yes, exact same thing kind of situation. That's what makes this song so appealing, and why I think it's really one of his most beautiful songs that he's ever written, lyrically, especially with with the contrast of the instrumental, because it's a very dark undertone. Because at the end of the day, he's basically saying we are all really messed up, but it can be interpreted as a positive spin because of the instrumental being so uplifting itself. Because if you'd thrown this on a classic Manson track from like, I don't know, say like Reflecting God, and replace the lyrics with this, right? With these, it would have a completely different tone. It would sound like, you know, he's saying we're all fucked up. That's the end of it, you know, screw everybody, blah, 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 blah. But with here, there's like some hope to that. It's just like, you know what? Don't look at your imperfections as faults. Look at them as unique. What is it? Look at them as ways that make you unique and make you stand out from everybody else. Going on to the next quote as well that I really like from the song is, am I a man or a show, a moment, the man in the moon, or a man of all seasons? So again, this is going back to Red, Black, and Blue's whole identity crisis kind of theme, or at least what I interpreted from Red, Black, and Blue. You know, am I a man or a show? Kind of self-explanatory. Like, am I Brian or am I Manson? because Manson is a spectacle, Brian is a person. Am I a moment? You know, we all are in some instance, right? But realistically speaking, does the impact that I have, or like talking as Manson, does the impact that Manson has really stand the test of time, or is this once he's dead, it's poof, it's gone? Like you're gonna that's it, right? It doesn't matter. The Man in the Moon or A Man of All Seasons. This is again going to the identity crisis portion of it. Has he trapped himself into being a spectacle? You know, has he trapped himself on the moon? Is he just by himself? Has he isolated himself from everybody else that he's trapped himself into being a spectacle? Or is he capable of becoming something more than just a spectacle? This song definitely stands out as like it definitely deserves to be the title track, because lyrically there is so much you can pull from this. I had to take a couple things out of here because I would have been talking about the song for like 10 minutes itself. It was but it is a very good song. I did thoroughly enjoy that one. Don't Chase the Dead. Another very unique song from Manson, and definitely one of my favorites on this album. It's got a 80s new wave meets David Bowie kind of influence, and it really stands out in this song. One of the lyrics that I absolutely love out of this song, though, is an ice cream truck in your inferno. I thought that was such a great lyric, because there's so many different ways that lyric can be interpreted. So for instance, you could look at it as just like, oh, you know, inferno, hot, ice cream, cold to hot, the contrast with that. Okay. You could look at it as what was another one? Inferno is hell, right? Ice cream's frozen, hell freezing over, maybe. Okay, that's a possibility. You could look at it as just straight heaven and hell. The ice cream truck's heaven, the inferno's hell, and heaven's always at risk of being destroyed by the inferno. Okay. Or another one, which I think probably makes the most sense, at least to me it does, is the ice cream truck is being used to symbolize the innocence, or is being used to symbolize innocence being destroyed by the inferno, like the world or whatever it is, essentially just innocence itself being destroyed, which I thought was so great. Because like I said, that's what? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 words that can be interpreted 4 different ways just right there. Just with what I came up with. I wouldn't doubt somebody else has another idea for that lyric as well. It's really, really cool. Another lyric, if tonight lasts forever, it won't matter if there's no tomorrow. This is basically Manson, from my understanding, saying that, you know, if he could stay in this particular moment, whatever that moment was, he would give up tomorrow in order for that to stay, because if he could just stay there forever, tomorrow wouldn't matter, right? But as we all know, tomorrow, for the most part, will in some way and somehow always come, and time keeps on a chugging. What is it? The chorus lyrics: don't chase the dead or they'll end up chasing you. This could be interpreted as a warning, you know, like be careful what you wish for kind of situation. As people pass around, as people around you pass away, you realize just how fleeting time really is. Going back to what I was just saying before about, you know, if you would give up he would give up tomorrow to stay in this moment forever, right? And I think we all would, think about, I remember the golden days, right? Or the golden years kind of situation where everything just felt great, where everything just felt perfect. But the more you grow up, the more you realize that you can't go back to that kind of situation. And the more that you realize that life is really catching up with you in some regard. Because like I just said, as people around you pass away, you realize how fleeting time really is, which that is the truth, especially when your peers or parents, for those who are lucky enough to get have their parents around when they're much older or middle-aged, like you tend to realize just how much time really has passed. And that's something to be cautious of, because it also shows how much closer your own mortality is to its end in some regard. Because it's like, all right, I'm now, my parents or my peers are starting to pass away. Like, oh my God, it really puts everything into perspective for you, where you're like, what is important to me kind of situation. But I don't want to keep thinking about them, because all I'll be thinking about is my own mortality. At least that's how I interpreted "Don't chase the dead, or they'll end up chasing you." Going on to song 4, "Paint You with My Love." This is a somber ballad with that I get almost like a sense of acceptance from. So like the lyric, "Let me paint you with my love." I do know that Manson likes to paint. I am aware that he also painted the artwork for this album, and I wouldn't doubt if he also painted the artwork for One Assassination Under God as well. But I know that he's been a very avid painter for a while now, just in general. So painting is probably a form of therapy for him, but it's also a way for him to really express what it is he's feeling in a way that words cannot do so. So painting is the only way for him to like really accurately describe how he feels. And there's probably some manner in which, and he probably did paint a bunch of portraits or something for his parents in that regard. The acceptance kind of just came from the fact of, the what was it, the lyric, "It's not a life sentence, but a death dream for you." Now, this one, this is another lyric that I genuinely really, really love, because this, again, like I said, this lyric in particular kind of carries the sense of acceptance of like, okay, we can't go back to how things were. I accept that in that regard. At least I can still paint my love for you kind of situation. But now, when you break the lyric, "It's not a life sentence, but a death dream for you." Dream carries such an innocent sentiment with it that life doesn't in this context, which is one of the reasons why I think I really love it. Even though you have life and dream next to, or you have life by itself, just life in general, life is usually a positive thing. Dream next to death would seem like a deterrent, or like he's trying to say something negative, but I genuinely think it comes out as an innocent sentiment. Like, your death dream is a returning to innocence, right? While the use of life feels dark, like a punishment, especially because it's next to sentence. Usually when you hear life and sentence next to each other, you think of prison. You think of that as a punishment. So I really love the fact that even for something as dark as death just being a word, right? Right next to something like dream, it doesn't come off in a negative manner. It actually comes out in the opposite way. It's like two negatives equaling a positive almost, right? Yeah, to me, death dream just sounds like essentially returning to innocence. Like I've accepted that you're gone, that you're no longer here, but I'm glad you've gone back to a light to I'm glad you're somewhere where you can return to purity or innocence again, yet again kind of situation. You're away from the horrors of the world and reality kind of situation. Sorry about that. Halfway and one step forward. Now, this is my favorite song on the album, personally. There is a sense of defeat and helplessness that comes along with it, but it's done in such a way that it's kind of one of those earworms you can't help but want to listen to again, especially with that piano melody. It does such a fantastic, it's so haunting that you really can't help but want to listen to it. You got lyrics like don't want to know, don't need to know, you got champagne problems. So I understand this song, or at least some of these lyrics, as this is Manson talking directly to himself, like in third person, almost, right? Don't want to know, don't need to know, you got champagne problems. Nobody cares about Manson's issues. He's rich, so it doesn't matter to them. Champagne problems, it's like being a first world tragedy, right? You know, these are like, if the only thing you're complaining about is, oh, my coffee wasn't warm enough when I got it, like you got champagne problems kind of situation. Except in this context, it's a matter of he's a man who is clearly broken, defeated, has no idea what to do. And there's almost this sense of, I'm assuming from his peers, that just nobody cares, really. Like, oh, whatever. You're Marilyn Manson. You're rich. Whatever. You'll get over it. Not a problem. Doesn't matter to me. But, you know, the man behind the mask, Brian, is just as human as anybody else. He's wearing his heart out on his sleeve here, and everyone's just kind of saying, no, how do I say this? People couldn't care less, essentially, at this point. They just kind of want to shoo him away and be like, yeah, okay, great, go away. Come back to me when you're ready to go perform again or ready to go do Manson things. And it's like, I really just love the idea of champagne, because that immediately just stuck out to me as, you know, that's a rich person kind of thing, you know. It's a very fancy kind of drink. So I interpreted that as rich people problems, essentially. Another one was the chorus, halfway and one step forward, past the point of no return. So the way I interpreted this was trying to move on, taking it one day at a time, right? But knowing that things will never be the same again, and you can't go back to how things were. A half step, or a step in general, is, you know, one step forward kind of situation. But each step you take, you can't, like, that's a step you're never going to be able to take back. You've taken the step, and that is it. There is no going back. We cannot return to, you know, like, what was it? Like Don't Chase the Dead was saying, you know, you can't return to your golden years. You can't return to a time where this person was alive. You can't return to anything, because time is fleeting. It's always moving forward. It will never rewind. You can never go back. It's something that we all, in some regard, take for granted, and we don't really understand until it directly affects us. And usually that is in the form of death. Ring all the bells you can ring. There's a crack in everything. That's how the sunlight gets in. Now, I really love this lyric as well. This was really, really, really good. Because the way I immediately interpreted this was, doing, looking, thinking of things that remind you of the person who's gone now, but doing these in a way that makes you feel like you're close to them, that those short little moments of happiness through the grief that like break through. That's the, where is it? That there's a crack in everything. That's how the sunlight gets in, even in the grief, there's something that's going to trigger a happy memory or a feeling of happiness that'll break through, and you'll have that brief second, 2 seconds of, oh, everything's fine, or hey, they're still here kind of situation. Things aren't as bad as they seem. But then it all just kind of fades back and reality sets back in, and you're left to ponder with your own thoughts again. It's a very powerful song with a feeling that everyone at some point in their lives has felt. And I think it's one of his most relatable songs in general, on top of that, because realistically speaking, everybody is going to go through this at some point in their lives. They've either experienced it or they are going to. And I think that's what makes this album, or not this album, this song in particular, stand out to me so much. That's probably one of the reasons why I like it, because maybe at some point in my life, I might come back to this song for this exact same situation. I might be in the same situation Manson was in this particular moment. And only then will I really understand what it is he was feeling at this time with my interpretation of this song. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful song on this album, and probably one of the reasons why it's my favorite, like I said. On to the next song, track 6, Infinite Darkness. The name of this song, I mean, you can just look at it in general. Infinite darkness, death, fading into the black, going to a deep sleep kind of situation, right? It's infinite. There's nothing as far as we know. It's a really bipolar follow-up to the previous song, but I think it does, while it's a little jarring to listen to halfway in one step forward and then go into infinite darkness, I do think it serves a purpose. It's a necessary purpose, because it really just shows how emotionally broken Manson is at this point. Because there's something about this song, it feels angrier, right? It feels more violent, like he's lashing out just in general, anything, just to get it out of him. You could interpret this song as the anger stage of grief. He's just lashing out, trying to get everything out because, fuck the world, fuck everything. I'm going to say and do what I need to say kind of situation. Especially when you got lyrics like, someone's going to die soon, don't get in the way. To me, that immediately comes off as, don't get attached to anyone because you'll just end up getting hurt in the end. Right? So he is completely given up on any kind of meaningful relationship with anybody, whether that's friends, or significant other or anything like that. He is just, he's closed himself off. He has hardened his heart. He's calloused on the outside, and he's not willing to make that mistake again. because not allowing it back in is easier than having it happen to him again. You've got other lyrics like, "You're dead longer than you're alive." I mean, pretty self-explanatory. Kind of is the case. We're all going to be dead a lot longer than we're going to be alive. That's just life. Yep. But having this at the very end of the song really just drives the point home. What's the point of being alive if nothing matters? Like, you've got some random Joe Schmo from 300 CE. Yeah, he probably knew people. He probably had family. A name, did something, was productive in his little village, right? You have no idea who he is. He could have been an asshole. We wouldn't have known. Especially us right now. Like, we don't know. But if being alive, but if nothing matters while being alive and you're just eventually going to be forgotten in general, then what's the point of really trying to do anything? Like, what's the point of trying to be a good person? What's the point of being a bad person? What's the point of life in general? You know, we're all eventually going to be forgotten. We're all eventually going to fade into obscurity. Now, you'll have the few people who their names will still remember. But I mean, if you look at, where is it? Let's go with George Washington. Yeah, we have documented things about the guy, but we don't really know him as a person. None of us do. He's just a guy that we've read things about. They could have been true. They could have not been true. We don't know, kind of situation. So realistically, all that's left behind is what is written about him and what society as a whole viewed him as, not who he actually was. And who he actually was is gone. It's forgotten. It's faded into obscurity. And that could be something directly with Manson as a whole. It's just like Manson, the spectacle, you know, the Antichrist and all that stuff, that'll be remembered. It'll be timely, but it'll be remembered in some regard because of the internet and all this other stuff. But Brian will be forgotten. When the people who know Brian personally are gone, that will also, again, be forgotten, because now it's just people saying who he was rather than the person while they were alive interacting with people and people understanding who he was while he was alive, kind of situation. So it, like I said, it carries a very angry kind of tone to it that the previous song doesn't. But I think the duality, the complete polar shift in I don't want to say tone, works out in the song's benefit, because it really helps to drive the point home. Where is it? Song 7, Perfume. So this is a song that takes a very big page out of the Pale Emperor, in my opinion. It's got a very heavy blues influence, but with a darker tone. One that fits this album a little bit more. But even with the darker tone, I could still see this fitting perfectly fine on the Pale Emperor as a whole. I also wouldn't doubt if the instrumental for this song was a demo or an idea that was made during the Pale Emperor era or writing process, and that it just got repurposed to be used here, because it definitely does feel like it. Sorry, I keep coughing. I'm sick, unfortunately. So, but the song has what is it? Lyrics like "You're as famous as your pain, 'cause victim is chic." So this I found to be very hilarious. I mean, I don't really go on the internet all that much, but up until recently, with a lot of stuff that's been going on, just in general, I never realized just how true that this lyric was, because being a victim is just stylish. It's fashionable. You know, the more trauma you have, the more tragedy you have in your past, the more famous or popular you are, or the more, for whatever reason, you have the right to tell other people to revolve around you. Like you're the center of the world kind of situation. What's that term people use? What is it, like main character syndrome or something, right? It I don't understand how people actually are like that, because I know that this is poking fun at them, but it's also entirely true. And I know he's also writing it because it's true as well, especially because he's in that Hollywood circle at that time. But it's incredible to see how much people will try to use the tragedy of their past as a benefit for them in the future. I don't I personally just do not understand that. Um but going back, but that seems to be the case, or not the case. That seems to be the theme of this song. It's talking about people using their past tragedy and trauma for their own benefit. I got another lyric like, but this one did make me laugh, and it still does. Get behind me, Satan. So I immediately interpreted this as a lyric that is telling the ruler of hell, like, hey, your trauma is not good enough. Nope, I don't really care. Oh, you came from hell? That's great. You don't know what hell was, because what my past was. Get behind me, kind of situation. The line starts all the way back there, kind of situation. I really just love how it pokes fun at the narcissism that a lot of celebrities or influencers or, you know, people online have, especially now. I think it's probably always been pretty bad, but for whatever reason, I think after COVID, it just got, or even during COVID, I think it got way worse. And it's just crazy how not only inconsiderate people are, but just how tone deaf people are to the world around them, where again, they just think the entire world revolves around them and people have to bend the knee to their will because they have a camera, or because they post something on the internet, or because they pretend to be somebody and get paid for it. As much as I love the lyrical content of this song, I would have to say that I do believe that this is the weakest song on the album. I don't think it's a bad song, but it's definitely not my favorite. I wouldn't see myself going out of my way to listen to this song, but if it came up, I wouldn't care, kind of situation. Track 8, Keep My Head Together. So, this is another one of my favorites off of this album. It brings a necessary energy to it that was just missing for the past couple of songs. Like Infinite Darkness was good, but it didn't carry this kind of energy, this kind of like pace increase, where, or BPM rise, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, let's go. Like I could nod my head to this. This is very similar to an old style kind of Manson song. Um, the very first lyrics, do we get what we deserve, or do we deserve what we get? And I'm sure that this is a thought that resonates with a lot of people. Is there actually a reason to try? Do we have any impact on our lives, or is it all just fate kind of situation, right? So do we actually how do I word this? You know, you're working your ass off for a position, for a promotion, right? And then all of a sudden it goes to somebody who is less qualified than you. What was the point of you working your ass off for it? Like, why didn't you get said position kind of situation? Like, is there no merit to like working towards something? Is it all just preordained? Is it just karma, right? Like, is it fate? Like I was saying, it's a question that, you know, I don't really think that there is an answer to, because there's multiple different speculations to that kind of point. And I think opening up the song with something as what's I'm looking for? I don't want to say divisive. Something as gray as that, you know, it's not black and white. It's very muddled. It's very sorry, I can't think of the exact word off the top of my head, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. You know, it's somewhere in the middle. It's not just a clear cut yes or no. It's something that's much more abstract in nature. I think it really keeps it fits well with the instrumental of the song, because it keeps your head going. Like, things are just coming at you and you're keeping your head together kind of situation, right? So like at the end of the day, you just gotta keep on going through it. Even if there's no answer, you gotta stick with an answer and just go, because there's no way you can stop. Because if you stop, you're only going to hurt yourself, essentially, with trying to think about the answer of a question like this. What is it? Don't try to change someone else. You'll just end up changing yourself. So this chorus lyric is something I really, really love. It's an incredibly powerful lyric, I do believe. No matter what you do, the change is in the hands of that someone else that the lyric is talking about, right? If you keep changing to help them and they don't reciprocate that change as well and grow as a human or like a person, then you're really the only one that's changing until you become someone you don't recognize kind of situation. And then you just realize, like, especially with like a relationship, you realize I'm not who I was when this relationship started. You're basically the same, but why am I now different? Well, that's because I'm trying to help you out because I want you to be a better person kind of thing. But I'm not getting that reciprocation back. And now I don't even recognize myself because I've been so focused on trying to change you that I inadvertently changed myself. So for me, that's got a sorry about that. For me, that has a very personal attachment to that line because I was in a similar situation like that, and I'm sure other people are as well. But for me, it was one of those things where I didn't realize that was the case until I heard a lyric like I really read this lyric, and then I realized, looking back, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. I just genuinely never realized that. And it's something that even to this day that I think about constantly because I don't want to change. Like, how do I say? I don't want to find myself in a position like that again. And it's really something that helps, keep you on true north. So you just keep doing how do I say? You keep doing what you can, but you don't overextend yourself, because if your help isn't wanted, then there's nothing more you can do. Like I said, that the change is in the hands of that someone else. But a really great song, thoroughly enjoy, keep my head together. Like I said, it has the feeling of an old Manson song mixed in with more of his modern style at this point. On to song 9, Salve Coagula. So this song brings the energy down from the previous song. And the somber atmosphere returns with some haunting melodies along with it. The lyrics continue the introspective theme of picking himself apart, Manson, that is, and kind of just really delving into his own mind, his own position, his own reality. Especially with lyrics like, no one else I want to be like, so I stayed the same like nobody else. So, I mean, clearly just from that, you can tell that Manson has no one he idolizes. So for better or for worse, he's just gonna be himself, because that way he remains unique. He remains true to himself by not pretending to be anybody else or trying to be like anybody else. But because the flip side, another thing for that as well is because he doesn't idolize anyone, he has no form of reference in general. So he has no direction on what he could do to even be changing to improve himself, if that is the case. Because sometimes, we look to, okay, what's this person doing? What did they do? All right, that's what I can do. Or having somebody tell you what to do. But if you don't want to change, or not change, if you don't listen, again, kind of keeps the theme of from Keep My Head Together about change. If you don't want to change, and now he is that someone else, that change is in his hands and he doesn't want to. So Salve Coagula is almost like a flip side thematically of Keep My Head Together, because one of them is, you could say Keep My Head Together is Manson's side of the story, but Salve Coagula is Brian's side of the story, right? If you were to consider these two sister tracks, like right next to each other, part one and part two. And I could say that right here, that Brian doesn't want to change. Like, he doesn't want to be anybody else, because he just wants to be him. And I think that's perfectly paralleled with the next lyric. So you think you can sing or clap? Well, all you need is an ear, so listen. I'm not special. I'm just broken, and I don't want to be fixed. So I immediately interpreted that as he's talking directly to us as fans. Granted, anybody who'll listen, but mostly to us, right? Like, this is a guy who's saying, stop revering me. I am not someone you should be looking up to. This is basically his way to distance himself from us, not because of class or anything like that, but just he doesn't idolize anybody, but he doesn't want to be someone else's idol, because then he has, what's I'm looking for? An unintended responsibility to be a certain kind of person. And with that responsibility comes restrictions. And with those restrictions makes, like I said, it makes him not Brian. It makes him not who he actually is. And I think ending the song with these lyrics to really send the message through, no matter what happens, for better or for worse, he is going to refuse to change, because he would rather be who he is than pretend to be somebody else. Which is ironic, considering in some regard he expresses himself through Manson, which is a mask. It's another part. It's another extension of himself, but it's not fully Brian. And it becomes almost the song itself, and this whole theme becomes a double-edged sword, because he can't live without Manson, but he can't live with him either. So for better or for worse, either way, he is going to be in some way, in some way, shape, or form unhappy with the direction he is going. Going on to the final track on the album, and again, one of my favorites, Broken Needle. So much like my comment on Sacrifice of the Mass, on One Assassination Under God, the use of the acoustic guitar throughout this song gives an incredible sense of vulnerability that I believe is then bolstered by the accompanying instruments and electronics during the chorus, like when everything just kind of comes together, and especially at the very end of the song. The song shows Manson at his weakest point, which the song in general can be interpreted as a cry for help, right? So you get lyrics like, when you wake up, rinse off all this pain and your makeup, stare into the mirror, the apples are always something to fear. So there's a lot to unpack from this. And I think this is like second line, third line into the into the actual lyrics themselves of the song. When the mask comes off, all that is left is Brian. Like the protection of Manson is gone. Like the mask is the makeup, right? So when that's gone, you're just left with Brian. But he can't look himself in the mirror, or he finds it hard to look himself in the mirror, rather, I should say, for two reasons, or at least the reasons that I came up with. One, because of how broken he is. You know, he's an addict, he's drinking, he's really not taking care of himself. Like, he is not somebody he recognizes, right? But also because he looks like his parents. That's all he sees, and it's a reminder that they're gone every time he looks himself in the mirror without any makeup on, because he looks like them. And if I'm not mistaken, this album was made around the time one of his parents passed away, or I think his last parent had passed away. So it's the only reference he has of them now in life and in reality that we've been living since their passing is himself, and is to look out, it's his face. He looks like his parents. So it's hard for him to look himself in the mirror when all he sees is his parents who are no longer with him. Next line. Are you all right? 'Cause I'm not okay. All of these lies are not worth fighting for. So immediately that can go to, again, like I mentioned before, can be interpreted as a cry for help, right? But this is also, I also like looking at this as a sense of, this is Manson having, or Brian having a conversation with Manson, you know, the two sides of him, right? Talking directly to each other. So, are you all right? Because I'm not okay. I interpret that section as Brian basically asking Manson if he's all right, because Brian is saying that he is not okay, and saying that, you know, all of this isn't worth fighting for. This is, I interpreted this as Brian being honest with Manson and telling him that he's hurt and falling apart, and he doesn't know what to do, right? He can't continue pretending to be Manson because there's no, like, what's the point to it? That seems to be another theme of this album. Like, what is the point of trying? What is the point of life? And it seems to me, almost in a sense, that he considered hanging it up. And what I mean by that is, you know, putting Manson in a chest, tucking it under the bed, or putting him away in the attic, and then that was the end. Like, he was ready to just call it, and just, that was it. I'm gonna ride off into the sunset, as best as I can and just leave it at that, because I just can't continue to pretend to do this anymore. Which I thought was a very interesting thing to say, because we are really just getting a glimpse into like this song as a whole is really just giving us a glimpse into what he was dealing with at that time. And it almost makes you feel a little bit how do I say it, awkward about it, because it's like, I don't know if I should be like reading this or hearing this. I appreciate it, but also I don't know you, and it kind of feels weird that I'm being let into this stuff in some regard. But I appreciate the artistic honesty of a song like this. Um, the chorus, I am a needle, dig in your grooves. Was that? I'm a needle, dig in your grooves, scratch you up, and oh my god, where the hell? Scratch you up, then I'll put you away. And the other lyric to put on top of that, I'll never ever play you again. This always felt, when I was listening to it, this felt like Manson was using a vinyl as an analogy to represent like this moment in his life when all of this was spiraling out of control. You know, the helplessness, didn't know what to do, like especially at the time when something like this was happening. Like he made this record, he scratched all of his pain into it. You know, he's the needle digging the groove into the vinyl. So he's scratching all of his pain into this. And now he wants to just be done with it, put it away, never look at it. He'll acknowledge it, but he doesn't want to ever listen to it again, and he doesn't want to ever deal with it again, kind of situation. He made the record to then just get everything he was feeling out. But now that it's out, he doesn't want it to be something that he goes back to. It's almost a cathartic way of it's a cathartic way of grieving. Like, this is the catharsis of the album. This is a way for him to just get it all out there, and now he can move on in that regard, right? And going off of that, this song feels like what the entire album was building up to. It's an eruption of emotion and a necessary release that makes listening to the entire album from start to finish worth it and satisfying. The song itself, I mean, the composition, the orchestral elements, the melodies, the haunting melody that plays at the end of the song that keeps on going over again until the song ends. It's just, there's something so appealing, but there's something so, what's I'm looking for, haunting about it, that you can't help but go back and want to listen to it, to experience it again. Long after the song is finished, it's still left an incredible impression on you, where you just, like I said, you want to go back and you want to listen to it, or you want to experience that again, because there's just something about the song that scratches a particular kind of itch that, at least for me, that I haven't really gotten from any other song on this album. Now, it's not to say that the rest of the album is bad, but this song, like I said, I think it's just, this is what the album was building up to. And if you listen to it from start to finish, it just makes it all the more satisfying, and it really scratches that itch to feel like this was worth the time, kind of situation. But one of my favorites off of this album, fantastic closer. If I remember hearing correctly, I did look into it, or not hearing, but look into it. I believe if you do get the vinyl for this album, it does play the last melody over and over and over again. It just loops it. So you have to be the one to then take the record off and put it away, which, going off of, again, the vinyl analogy he was using, is really, really, really cool. I do love that, because now you have to, it's almost like he puts the listener who has a vinyl in the same position that he was. You have to then pick it up, put it away. But will you go back and listen to it again? That's up to you. So my rating for this album, I'm going to give this a pretty solid 9.2 out of 10. The two words I would use to describe this album would be dark and vulnerable. This is a side of Manson that we've never seen, and quite frankly, I don't think we'll ever see a side of him like this again either, which makes it even more of a unique album in his discography as a whole. The album feels like it took everything he learned from Born Villain and onwards, while also trying some, new creative directions and new creative ideas. Like in the title track, We Are Chaos, Don't Chase the Dead, and Halfway and One Step Forward. And I think it's a refined sound. It is a much more refined sound of the previous albums, like Born Villain, The Pale Emperor, and Heaven Upside Down. The album really does a great job of keeping the listener's attention, but not making it so that every song feels the same. While the somber tone can get a little repetitive for some people, especially if you're not looking for that kind of music, I can understand the apprehension or the reservations about wanting to listen to the entire song or the entire album as a whole. I get that. But I definitely think what he set out to do, he did a fantastic job of doing. I understand that I might be in the minority for this rating, for giving it a really high rate, or as high of a rating as I did, and for my opinion on this album, but it's one of my favorites from him, personally. I don't think it rivals, his Holy Trinity of Antichrist Superstar, Mechanical Animals, or Hollywood, or even, One Assassination Under God. But I do believe it is some of his best work in general. If you had to strike off those 4 albums, I would probably recommend this album. It would either be this or another album, which I won't say just yet. But this is without a doubt some of his best work, and because, like I said, I don't think we'll ever get to see this snapshot of him like this again, it makes it all the more unique as an album, and definitely makes it stand out from the rest of his discography as a whole. But that'll do it for the review. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this album. Let's keep everything civil, please. I'm fine with a little discourse, but let's not do any name calling or anything like that. Let's keep things civil and talk about this like people. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye.